A career spanning 18 years. Over 3,000 tattoos etched into skin. And one rule he had never broken. No religious images. Until the day a client asked for the Virgin Mary. He said yes. And what happened next began with ink and ended with something he couldn't explain. But before we go further, pause for a second. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I want to see just how far these stories travel. You know the kind of artist people wait months to see? Derek Collins was that artist. 43 years old. Nearly 2 decades in the craft. An 8-month waiting list just to sit down and talk to him. That wasn't hype, it was reality. His studio sat on the 3rd floor of an old New York building. Quiet, clean, bright. The kind of place that didn't need to impress you, because the work already did. Derek didn't advertise. He didn't need to. One look at his tattoos, and you understood. They didn't just sit on the skin, they felt alive. Eyes that seemed to follow you. Shadows with depth, so real they looked like they could move. Faces that carried emotion, memory, presence. Hyperrealism at a level most artists wouldn't even attempt. People brought him everything. Portraits of parents, children, partners, pets. Memories they didn't want to lose. Stories they wanted to carry forever. And Derek delivered. Other tattoo artists sent him clients when the job was too complex, too delicate, too important. He'd won awards across the country. Spoke at conventions. Taught workshops. Always learning. Always refining. Always chasing perfection. 3,000 tattoos. And not a single one was religious. Whenever someone asked, he gave the same answer. Polite. Professional. Final. Not my specialty. I can recommend someone else. He never argued. Never explained. Just no. Why? Have you ever met someone who simply doesn't believe? Not aggressively. Not defensively. Just doesn't. That was Derek. His wife, Megan, went to church. He didn't. They never fought about it. She went. He stayed. Life moved forward. At Christmas, they decorated the tree. Exchanged gifts. Cooked dinner together. But the faith behind it? That part never belonged to him. If a client said, "God bless you," Derek would nod politely and move on. He wasn't angry at faith. He just lived outside of it. Like someone who had quietly closed a door a long time ago and never looked back. His days followed a rhythm. 9 a.m., he opened the studio, set up his station, organized his inks, reviewed the design. 10 o'clock, he started. Then came hours of silence. Just the steady buzz of the machine. Low music in the background. Total focus. Derek didn't talk much while working, not because he didn't like people, but because precision demanded everything. Clients respected that. They trusted his silence. At the end of every session, he took photos. Posted them online. Thousands of followers. Every post blowing up. Comments flooding in. People tagging friends. Saving the images. Sharing them. He understood the game. But his favorite part wasn't the likes. It was the moment after. When the client stood in front of the mirror and saw it for the first time. He had seen it thousands of times. And still he watched. Some smiled. Some cried. Some just stood there, frozen. Once, a woman stared at her reflection for 10 full minutes. He had tattooed her father, gone for 2 years. "It's him," she whispered. "It's exactly him." That was Derek's gift. Not just technique. Recognition. Life. And then came Tuesday. October. 10 a.m. Her name was Rachel. 34 years old. Brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Calm, but carrying something heavy behind her eyes. She arrived exactly on time. Derek was ready. They had spoken 2 months earlier during the consultation. He remembered that conversation clearly. She had waited her turn like everyone else. And when she finally sat across from him, she told him what she wanted. A Virgin Mary. Left ribcage. Medium size. Hyper-realistic. He remembered the exact moment she said it. That familiar reflex rose instantly. Say no. That's not my specialty. But this time, he didn't. He couldn't explain why. It wasn't about money. He had more work than he could handle. It was something in her story. Something that made him hesitate, just long enough to say yes. For the first time in 18 years. Now she was lying on the table. Ready. And he was about to do the one thing he had avoided his entire career. "Tell me again," Derek said, arranging his tools. "What exactly do you want?" Rachel took a breath and told him everything. He already knew part of it. But this time, she didn't leave anything out. 3 years ago, she had a son, Lucas. He was born with a serious heart condition. Doctors were honest. Too honest. "It's critical," they said. "He'll need surgeries." constant monitoring. And even then, there are no guarantees. She looked down for a moment. They told me to be ready, she said quietly. Ready for the worst. Rachel had lost her mother years before. Her mother had been deeply devoted to the Virgin Mary. There had always been a small image in her room. She prayed every night, held the rosary like it was part of her, spoke of the Virgin as if she were present. Family. When her mother died, Rachel walked away from all of it. No prayer, no church, no belief. She put that image in a box and forgot it existed. Until Lucas. I didn't know what to do, Rachel said, her voice softer now. I didn't even remember how to pray. So she opened the box, took the image out, and every night, she spoke. Not perfectly, not traditionally, just honestly. I would look into her eyes and say, please, please save my son. Derek worked in silence while she spoke. Machine ready, hands steady, but listening, always listening. Lucas had his first surgery at 3 months. It went well, better than expected. The second at 8 months. Same result. Then the tests began to improve. Slowly, unexpectedly. Rachel paused, her eyes filled with tears, and her voice dropped to almost a whisper. When he was 1.5 years, the doctor called me into his office. The doctor held the papers in his hands, eyes fixed on the results longer than usual. I don't know how to explain this, he finally said. But, your son is completely normal. Rachel had looked at Derek as she said it. Lucas is 3 now, she continued softly. He runs, plays, everything. The doctors still monitor him, but they keep saying the same thing. They've never seen anything like it. Derek didn't react. He kept organizing his tools like it was just another story. I know you probably don't believe this, Rachel added, taking a breath. But I prayed every night. For 2 years. She paused. And now I want her with me. Always. So I never forget. Derek nodded. No comments. No opinions. Just work. Before starting, Derek did what he always did. He designed. Every tattoo began on paper. Sketch first. Adjustments. Approval. Only then, skin. Rachel pulled out her phone. Images of the Virgin Mary filled the screen. Different styles. Different expressions. This one, she said, pointing. I like the eyes. Derek leaned closer. The gaze was calm, but deep. Not empty. Not decorative. Present. Can you do it like this? Rachel asked. With that expression? I can, Derek said. And technically he could. Eyes were his specialty. He had done thousands. He sat at the drawing table, pencil in hand. The outline came naturally. Shape, composition, balance. Everything flowed. Until he reached the eyes. Derek stopped. Drew once. Looked. No. Erased. Again. Still wrong. Erased. That never happened. Eyes were the one thing he never struggled with. But these, they wouldn't come alive. He tried again. And again. Time passed. Rachel stayed quiet. Patient. 40 minutes. 40 minutes on just the eyes. Finally, he stopped. Not perfect. Acceptable. He showed it. Rachel's face lit up immediately. It's beautiful, she said. That's it. Derek nodded. But inside he knew. It wasn't right. He told himself he'd fix it during the session. Rachel lay down. Left side exposed. Derek transferred the stencil. Adjusted placement. She approved instantly. Perfect, she said. The machine buzzed to life. Let's begin. The first hours were routine. Lines first. Clean. Precise. Controlled. Then shadows. Layer by layer. Depth forming slowly. Rachel stayed still. Pain in the ribs wasn't easy, but she handled it. Derek worked in silence. Focused. Professional. Everything as it always was. Third hour. Details. Face structure. Cheeks. Nose. Veil. Everything fell into place. Exactly as planned. Then, the eyes. Derek paused for a second. Took a breath. And began. The iris first. Soft layers of brown. Gradients. Light reflections. Precision work. And then, he felt it. A scent. Faint. Almost nothing. Roses. Derek ignored it. Kept working. But it grew stronger. Clear. Present. Like fresh flowers placed beside him. He stopped. Looked around. Nothing. No flowers. There never were. Are you wearing perfume? He asked. Rachel opened her eyes slightly. No, she said. Why? You smell something? She asked. Derek hesitated. Then shook his head. No. Nothing. He went back to work. But the scent didn't leave. It stayed. Wrapped around the space. Minutes passed. He continued. focused, but distracted. Then something else. Heat. In his hands. Not fatigue. Not strain. Heat. Deep. Intense. He stopped again. Looked at his fingers. Nothing visible. But he felt it. Strong. Unnatural. He flexed his hands. Still there. Everything okay? Rachel asked quietly. Yeah, he replied. But it wasn't true. Fourth hour. Second eye. The first one had turned out better than expected. Strangely better. Now he worked on the second. Final details. Final highlights. The small touches that bring life. The smell still there. The heat still there. Derek was working, but something inside him had shifted. Focused. And unsettled. Then he finished. Cleaned the area. Stepped back. Looked. And froze. The eyes. They weren't what he had drawn. Not exactly. Same shape. Same color. Same technique. But something else was there. Depth. Presence. Life. More than ink should ever hold. Derek blinked. Looked again. They were still there. Looking. At him. Not imagination. Not lighting. Not fatigue. Looking. His heart started pounding. His mouth went dry. Hands trembling now. He glanced at Rachel. Eyes closed. Still. Unaware. He looked back. The eyes remained. Fixed. Deep. Watching. And then, for a single second, they moved. A blink. Subtle. Impossible. But real. Derek saw it. He saw it. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stood there. Machine silent in his hand. Time blurred. Seconds, or longer. He didn't know. Then he noticed something else. Tears. Running down his face. He hadn't even felt them start. He wasn't sad. Wasn't happy. Nothing made sense. But the tears kept falling. He wiped them quickly. Looked at Rachel. Still unaware. The scent of roses began to fade. The heat in his hands softened. But the eyes. Even normal again. He knew. He knew what he had seen. Derek finished the tattoo on autopilot. Final touches. Cleaning. Wrapping. Everything mechanical. Professional. But his mind. Far away. I think we're done, he said. His voice, different. Rachel sat up slowly. Derek handed her the mirror. She looked. And immediately. Tears. It's her, she whispered. It's exactly her. Derek said nothing. The eyes, she said, voice breaking. That's how I saw her, every night. She kept staring. Long emotional. Thank you, she said finally. You have no idea what this means to me. Derek nodded. Still silent. She left. And Derek stayed. Alone. Sitting in the chair. Staring at nothing. Trying to understand. He reached for his phone. Opened the photo. The finished tattoo. Looked at the eyes. Perfect. Beautiful. Technical. But normal. No depth. No life. No movement. Just ink. But Derek knew. What he had seen was real. He put the phone down. Sat in silence. And for the first time in years, he had no explanation. And that's when he remembered Emily. Emily died 3 days before her 11th birthday. And that was the moment Derek stopped praying. Now, 27 years later, sitting alone in his studio, that memory came back. Clear, sharp, untouched by time. He felt it in his chest. That weight. The one he had carried for decades without even realizing it was still there. It had never left. It had only buried itself deeper. Not rage. Not the kind that explodes. Something colder. Quieter. A silent resentment that slowly turns into distance. Into disbelief. Into this doesn't make sense, so I won't believe it. From that day on, Derek had walked away from everything. No church. No prayers. No faith. Because in his mind, the logic was simple. If someone was up there, Emily would still be here. End of story. For 27 years, he lived like that. No hope in anything beyond what he could see. And he thought he was fine. But now, after what he had just experienced, he didn't know anything anymore. Derek broke. Not quiet tears this time. Real ones. Heavy. Uncontrolled. He sat there in his chair, under the bright studio lights, crying like he hadn't since he was a teenager. For Emily. For everything he had buried. For every time he had refused a religious tattoo, because he couldn't face what it meant. For all the years he pretended it didn't matter. He didn't know how long it lasted. Time didn't exist in that moment. And somewhere in the middle of it, he spoke. Not a prayer. He didn't remember how to pray. But he spoke. Softly. Broken. What do you want from me? No answer. Just silence. I prayed, he whispered. You know I did. His voice cracked. And you didn't listen. More tears. Why me? Why now? What was that? And then, something shifted. Not outside. Inside. A realization. Simple. Brutal. Clear. It wasn't disbelief. It had never been disbelief. It was fear. Fear of hoping again and losing everything. Fear of believing and being shattered a second time. And for the first time in his life, he admitted it. That night, Derek went home. Megan asked how his day was. Normal, he said. She knew it wasn't. But she didn't push. She knew him well enough to wait. Days passed. Work continued. Clients came and went. The machine buzzed. Ink flowed. Everything looked the same. But Derek wasn't. He was quieter. More present. Looking differently. He didn't tell anyone. Who would believe him? I saw a tattoo look back at me. It sounded insane. So he kept it to himself. 3 weeks later. Sunday morning. Derek said something Megan never expected. I want to go to the cemetery. She looked at him, surprised. In 15 years together, he had never gone. Do you want me to come? She asked gently. No, he said. I need to go alone. And so he went. For the first time, he stood there, in front of Emily's grave, not knowing what to do, not knowing what to say. Then he sat down on the grass. And he talked. About everything. About the tattoo. About the eyes. About the smell of roses. The warmth in his hands. The tears that came out of nowhere. I don't know what that was, he said quietly. The wind moved through the trees. Leaves whispered above him. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel empty. That night, he told Megan everything. About Emily. About the prayers he once believed in. About the loss that shaped him. About what happened in the studio. She listened. Without interrupting. Without questioning. Just listening. I always knew there was something, she said softly. Something you were carrying. She held his hand. I don't know what happened that day, she continued. And honestly, it doesn't matter. She looked at him. What matters is what it did to you. A month later, his son Noah came home from school. Dad, he said, Tommy's getting baptized. His mom invited us. Can we go? Derek paused, then nodded. We can. It was the first time he stepped into a church in decades. He didn't pray, didn't follow along, but he stayed. He watched. He saw the moment the water touched the child's head, saw the mother smile, and for the first time, he didn't feel anger. Months passed. The studio stayed the same. Same walls, same tools, same light. Derek was working on a portrait, an elderly man, a grandfather, delicate work, precise, familiar. He paused, looked at it, and smiled. Barely noticeable, but real. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. The technique was the same. The ink was the same. His hands were the same. But something deeper had shifted. Something beyond skill. Something he couldn't name. Derek Collins still tattoos. Still one of the best. Still booked months ahead. But one thing is different now. He doesn't refuse religious work anymore. He doesn't claim to understand. He doesn't pretend to have answers. But he accepts something he never could before. That there are things beyond explanation. And that's okay. The photo of that tattoo, the Virgin Mary on Rachel's rib, is still on his phone. Sometimes, late at night, he opens it. Just looks. Quietly. Because Derek learned something. Sometimes we don't choose. Sometimes we are chosen. And sometimes, the eyes that look back at us are exactly what we needed to see. And if you made it this far, write eyes in the comments. Because those were the eyes that changed everything. And every time I see that word, I'll know one more person felt something in this story. If this touched you, stay. There are more stories like this. Sometimes a story is all it takes. And may the Virgin Mary continue to watch over you and your family.